At a cafe on a bright plaza, most customers sit back, feeling the warmth of the sun, enjoying their cold drinks. But not Tim. He barely notices the sun and doesn't really taste his coffee. For him, this corner affords a good view of the city, and in the teeterings of the passers-by and the arc of the shopgirl's hand as she displays tea to an interested gentleman, Tim hopes to see clues. That night at the cinema, fictitious adventurers lunge implausibly across the screen. The audience here is mixed. Some are patrons of the cafe, now sitting excitedly in the plush chairs, eager for another new flavor, for distraction from the boredom of their easy lives. Other seats hold fishermen and farm workers, hoping to forget their toils and rest their hands. Tim is here too, but he is scrutinizing the gloss on the lips of the screen, measuring the angle of the plume of a distant helicopter crash. He thinks it discerns a message, and when the cinema closes and most of the audience strolls down the plaza to the south, Tim goes north. People like Tim seem to live oppositely from the other residents of the city, tide and riptide, flowing against each other. Tim wants, like nothing else, to find the princess, to know her at last. For Tim, this would be momentous, sparking an intense light that embraces the world, a light that reveals the secrets long kept from us, that illuminates or materializes a final palace where we can exist in peace. But how would this be perceived by the other residents of the city in the world that flows contrariwise? The light would be intense and warm at the beginning, but then flicker down to nothing, taking the glass with it. It would be like burning down the place we've always called home, where we played so innocently as children, destroying all hope of safety forever. Tim is off on a search to rescue the princess. She has been snatched by a horrible and evil monster. This happened because Tim made a mistake. Not just one. He made many mistakes during the time they spent together all those years ago. Memories of their relationship have become muddled, replaced wholesale, but one remains clear: the princess turning sharply away, her braid lashing at him with contempt. He knows she tried to be forgiving, but who can just shrug away a guilty lie, a stab in the back? Such a mistake will change a relationship irreversibly, even if we have learned from the mistake and would never repeat it. The princess's eyes grew narrower. She became more distant. Our world, with its rules of causality, has trained us to be miserly with forgiveness. By forgiving too readily, we can be badly hurt. But if we've learned from a mistake and become better for it, shouldn't we be rewarded for the learning rather than punished for the mistake? What if our world worked differently? Suppose we could tell her, "I didn't mean what I just said," and she would say, "It's okay, I understand," and she would not turn away, and life would really proceed as though we had never said the thing. We could remove the damage, but still be wiser for the experience. Tim and the princess lounge in the castle garden, laughing together, giving names to the colourful birds. Their mistakes are hidden from each other, tucked away between the folds of time, safe. All those years ago, Tim had left the princess behind. He had kissed her on the neck, picked up his travel bag, and walked out the door. He regrets this to a degree. Now he's yearning to find her again, to show he knows how sad it was, but also to tell her how it was good. For a long time, he thought they'd been cultivating a perfect relationship. He had been fiercely protective, reversing all his mistakes so they would not touch her. Likewise, keeping a tight rein on her own mistakes, she always pleased him. But to be fully couched within the comfort of a friend is a mode of existence with severe implications. To please you perfectly, she must understand you perfectly. Thus you cannot deny her expectations or escape her reach. Her benevolence has circumscribed you, and your life's achievements will not reach beyond the map she has drawn. Tim needed to be non-manipulable. He needed a hope of transcendence. He needed sometimes to be immune to the princess's caring touch. Off in the distance, Tim saw a castle where the flags flutter even when the wind has expired, and the bread in the kitchen is always warm. A little bit of magic. Visiting his parents' home for a holiday meal, Tim felt as though he had regressed to those long-ago years when he lived under their roof, oppressed by their insistence on upholding strange values which to him were meaningless. Back then, bickering would have rubbed over drops of gravy spilled on the tablecloth. Escaping, Tim walked in the cool air towards the university he'd attended after moving out of his parents' home. As he distanced himself from that troubling house, he felt the embarrassment of childhood fading into the past. But now he stepped into all the insecurities he'd felt at the university, all the panic of walking a social tightrope. Tim only felt relieved after the whole visit was over, sitting back home in the present, steeped in contrast. He saw how he'd improved so much from those old days. This improvement, day by day, takes him ever closer to finding the princess. If she exists, she must. She will transform him and everyone. He felt on his trip that every place stirs up an emotion, and every motion invokes a memory, a time, and a location. So couldn't he find the princess now, tonight, just by wandering from place to place and noticing how he feels? A trail of feelings, of awe, of inspiration, should lead him to that castle in the future. Her arms enclosing him, her scent fills him with excitement, creates a moment so strong he can remember it in the past. Immediately, Tim walked out the door, the next morning, towards whatever the new day held. He felt something like optimism. She never understood the impulses that drove him, never quite felt the intensity that over time just lit lines into his face. She was never quite close enough to him, but he held her as though she were, whispered into her ear words that only a soulmate should receive. Over the remnants of dinner, they both knew the time had come. He would have said, "I have to go and find the princess," but he didn't need to. Giving a final kiss, hoisting a travel bag to his shoulder, he walked out the door. Through all the nights that followed, she still loved him as though he had stayed, to comfort her, protect her, princess be damned. Perhaps in a perfect world, the ring would be a symbol of happiness. It's a sign of ceaseless devotion. Even if he will never find the princess, he will always be trying. He still will wear the ring. But the ring makes its presence known. It shines out to others like a beacon of warning, makes people slow to approach, suspicion, distrust, interactions all torpedoed before Tim can open his mouth. In time, he learns to deal with others carefully. He marches their hesitant pace, tracing a soft path through their defenses, and this exhausts him, and it only works to a limited degree. It doesn't get him what he needs. Tim begins to hide the ring in his pocket, but he can hardly bear it. Too long tucked away, that part of him might suffocate.